Ethereum has started to break out, and it is making me extremely excited for the future of altcoins. Matter of fact, I think that this right now is prime time for alts. And ladies and gentlemen, when I tell you this chart is looking juiced up, you better take it seriously, because take a look at this. Ethereum, as it currently stands, is trading at roughly $3,130 US. Now, this on its own may to some people feel like a minute change. It is only up what? Like 5% throughout the day. Why is this guy right here, this guy right here, making such a big fuss about it? Well, ladies and gentlemen, because this is making me super excited for all the altcoins which are to follow, because take a look at this. The overall altcoin market cap, this is the total crypto cap excluding BTC and ETH, has been falling throughout the day. Matter of fact, when we take a look, Bitcoin has been falling throughout the day, and all of a sudden, Ethereum is up 5% throughout the day. The reason I am excited is because the old sayings used to always be Bitcoin first, ETH second, major alts third, medium alts afterwards, small alts, and then micro alts, something along those lines, and it was kind of forgotten. But right now, all of a sudden, the ETH ecosystem is doing well, and we talked about this last week. Just last week, I was saying, I think one of the areas that could still be a pretty interesting trade is actually AVA, ENS, Curve, Uniswap, just everything related to the ETH ecosystem. Because there are so many people that like to say, this season, ETH is going to go to zero, and I keep replacing that by saying, well, most of the stablecoin usage, most of the DeFi usage, most of the major companies right now as it stands, take a look at freaking Donald Trump, right? Most of those instances, for most of those instances, they still choose Ethereum. So even though you might say that Solana or Hyperliquid or whatever other new layer one is actually taken over, it's still going to take a very long time for them to do that. And I still personally think out of almost any coin, quick little disclaimer, nothing I say in these videos is financial advice. Every single thing I talk about in these videos is purely my own opinion. I will never make any guarantees for you, for your results, or whatever. It's all just my personal own opinion. But I was going to say, I feel as if, and this is a personal thing, Ethereum is one of the most undervalued alts, which is why I decided to open a new position just a few days ago, right? You saw me open a new 75K Ethereum long in the bot form. We also opened another 50K ETH long here with only 3x leverage. Why did we do that? Well, because I told you, and I still stand by this now, that ETH at 3x, similarly hype at 3x, some of those are just some of the easiest opportunities in crypto. And again, right now the price could fall. I don't care. Matter of fact, I do from a buying perspective. I right now feel so FOMO-y about ETH because you gotta remember, we are so criminally cheap when it comes to the rest of the market. ETH is one of the most undergained altcoins of the entire season. And that's kind of logical because of the number 2 coin. You expect smaller coins to gain more, but at the start of a rally, you expect people to go in, for example, the order of the ETF flow. You know, it's expected that if Bitcoin is doing the best of the best, and almost no altcoins are outperforming it, which is not fully true, but somewhere close to the truth, we do expect Ethereum to at least be similar to Bitcoin, following a similar pattern. But when you take a look at ETH versus Bitcoin, then you realize it's been going down and down and down and down throughout all these years. And I always say that if you're still below the 200 weekly moving average, you're still quite cheap. And a fun fact is, in my opinion, we could still get another 20% rally going or so versus Bitcoin. That is, again, talking about ETH versus Bitcoin before we get into good territory, before we get into real bullish territory. And that just shows you how, in my opinion, crazy cheap ETH is here. But more importantly, you know, in an altcoin season, there's also a few additional markers that are quite interesting. One is, how heavy can altcoins continue to gain when BTC is down, when BTC is sideways? In general here, the altcoins also move down with Bitcoin as Bitcoin moved. Essentially though, the prices are not down as much, which again signifies an altcoin season. Why? Well, if you're looking throughout most of the, runner-up of 2021, there's almost been no weeks except for really close towards the end where alts went down significantly in 1 week. And right now, if you take a look at the week, matter of fact, we are actually still trending upwards. There's a lot of people who place these hateful or scared comments, and all I keep responding back is, whatever you want to do it right now and stop blabbering about it. Stop saying, yeah, but I told you that. All I'm doing right now, and I make this very, very clear, is I am looking at where things are undervalued based on momentum. Again, so there's always two methods of investing: value investing, momentum investing. We can combine those sometimes to look at, hey, which things are doing really, really well, we expect them to go further, but are actually still, for example, based on the 200 weekly moving average, still in quite a cheap spot. Generally speaking, altcoins are not as cheap as they were, for example, a few weeks back here at the beginning of April, or here, for example, just a few weeks ago. Again, relatively the entire altcoin market was undervalued, and based on this marker right there, the Bitcoin dominance and a few others, we basically observed that, well, there's another one here, right? This is the main Bitcoin chart. If you were to buy into every single Bitcoin breakout, it has never gone wrong yet. But again, the past does not indicate a guaranteed future. But every single time, if you'd gone crazy on the BTC breakout, it would have worked out beautifully in the rally afterwards. Every single time, every single time. Take out the top, crazy rally. Take out the top, crazy rally. Every single time. It's just really, really crazy. So what does this mean for our coins like XRP, etc.? I'm going to say that if ETH is able to sustain a little bit of a rally on its own, even though Bitcoin is going down or sideways, this will quickly transfer over into many of our top coins as well. XRP right now is facing a pretty logical resistance. We talked about this before. The $3 mark is just a very, very hard one to crush. It's the most important psychological barrier. We talked about where TRX was going to get some struggles. This is again Tron, and indeed it also decided to face some struggles. This line was just talking about something. Don't worry too much about the market falling down here. It was a little bit of a different story, but hey, we can basically chart any single altcoin individually, but you can throw all of that out the window, every single piece of theory there, if ETH just decides to make one extra leg up. ETH is so much more important than many of y'all realize. Most, I think, of the altcoin movements are all still decided by the sentiment in ETH. Well, they don't have to be, but they could. And that just means even if Bitcoin is going down, if ETH is showing strong signs, it can just set the narrative for altcoins very easily. The same thing can be said for Solana, though. For example, when the president was launching a meme coin on Sol, you could argue that that also ignited something for just the entire market, because just Solana got into a good hype spot, but it's a bit broader than that, right? This is a bit more plain. And all I'm saying is, if I had to look for some of the best plays of the season, if we're talking about some of the plays that are easiest to spot, is that ETH is not really, really cheap in dollar terms. It's only got 50% more gains to go to a high. But in terms of BTC, it's really, really cheap here for the season. So that is an interesting play, right? There are strategies you could do simply on ETH versus BTC. Matter of fact, we could even open a bot for specifically that, but I don't know if you want to get into mixing your pairs. I think the easier one is to always just stick with dollar trades, but that's just my own personal opinion. But there's a pretty good showcase here. Almost every single altcoin recently faced a very, very interesting resistance. Almost every single one of them has broken down a little bit over the past day or so. And all of a sudden, ETH decides to make that move. And the question is, can it be teeing off for a little bit? It's one of the easiest plays of any season, ETH and a few others. Again, the reason I have them open with very, very low lev, almost no leverage here, is because I was showing everybody, just like last week or so, that if you just scale into positions like this, it's some of the easiest things you can do. There's a lot of my friends who are selling most their ETH right now at 3,100 or slightly below that even, and I told them as well, and they knew it, and everybody confirms the same thing. Everybody knows they're selling quite early for one of the most monstrous rallies, but some people just do not want to deal with the ETH back and forth, the ETH curse, we can almost call it, because it seems to just never want to break out. But my counter would be that this, for size, and that just means for people that already have significant size, that just want to have something that's, in my opinion, quite an easy one, they can enter with significant size. Again, right now what we've got here is peanuts, right? But I think ETH is one of those plays where I could really just look at it and think, you know what, we could open about, let's see here, about, depending on what leverage we do, in this case here we can open 1.5 mil worth of positions. What is the probability that this will be up over a 3-month span, right? And if you do the math for yourself, you realize, well, from a risk reward angle, I don't want to say it again because I'm afraid of what's happening here on the channel. I'm trying to be really, really careful saying some numbers, making things look like guarantees, because obviously nothing I say ever is a guarantee, nothing is financial advice, but I want to really make sure I say that every single time I say something potentially dubious to the YouTube system, I suppose. But let me just summarize it like this, then I think this is the way I can do it. I have thought about almost buying every single altcoin. As you can see, I've got bots for almost every single altcoin. The ones that perform the best in bot form are the ones that are most volatile. And you like memes, you like things that go up, but generally speaking, where everybody's just unsure what they do. Why? Because the more volatile they are, the more you can cash it in grids, and the crazier your APR looks. You can see Pengo right now is at a 700% APR. So over a yearly period, just seeing the volatility continue, that's what we would make. Algorand has also been crazy right here, even though we're down tremendously. But on the opposite side, I think for the bot situation, again, this also applies, but even just for longs, if we are looking for positions that I could just, at any price point right now, anything below the all-time high, in my opinion, just scale into really, really hard because it's so undervalued. It's still number two in terms of ETF, still number two in almost anything. Number one, actually, in most other realms where Bitcoin is not that active. It's just, I think, one of the easiest opportunities. There's been a curse on ETH for a long time where people have said, no, it's never gonna. I still think it's almost, it's just one of the easiest opportunities, I think. Because regardless of how much you hate it, just again today, the fact that it was able to go up 5% or so on a down Bitcoin day, just to kind of smack everybody in the face. Because again, everybody in the community is saying, again, that ETH is going to be left behind because everything is going up except for ETH. And then all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, it gives a little spark of hope. It gives a little go. Some will argue that, no, this is because they want you to then buy in so they can dump on your head. And I argue the exact opposite, which is you'll see in a few months how all of a sudden ETH was such an easy play and people who should have only realized because it happens like that every single time. ETH was at 4K not too long ago as well. All of a sudden it went back to 1.9 and went back lower, right? 1.3, something like that. And I even at that point said, wow, this is such a crazy, crazy situation. But at that point, the worries in the world were a bit higher for us to really scale in hard. But this is a different time. We are a few months later in the market. We all of a sudden are in a completely different climate. For me, the altcoin season is really, really here. And all we're thinking of is how can we make the best use of it? And at which points do we enter? At which points do we get out? I think this is, again, another sign that ETH here is ready for a major, major breakthrough. It's kind of seeing that Bitcoin treatment right now, where it was teasing the all-time high piece by piece by piece. I kind of feel as if that's what's happening to ETH right here, for the fact it's being able to do it on its own, and just by looking at this chart, the way it's going. Again, just look at it for fun, right? Just 2 months ago, is at what, like $1,300 All of a sudden right now we are at 3 point something. It is slowly but surely absolutely destroying a lot of other coins in terms of gains. You just have to be able to see it. Again, from the perspective of how much market cap it has and all that, this still, in my opinion, is a pretty good opportunity. The ETH moves down here all of a sudden. That's going to be another one where I'm going to really, really enter hard, like hard. This is, again, one of those moments where you just got to, I think, go a little bit blind for it, a little bit crazy for it, but I really, really will. Even right now, I'm thinking, even at 3,100, relative to where it's going to be probably so shortly from now, as long as the market doesn't crazy crash, is I still think it'll outperform Bitcoin on the short term. Right? I still am quite convinced of that. People will first say, no, because Bitcoin. I still think ETH, just what they've shown me today, will hit again another round. But then again, over a longer period of time, I think many of our coins, XLM, XRP, all of them will outperform. It's just that I think ETH will actually set a better top first. That's most of the conclusion right here. And it's funny how I've drawn that from what happened today, right? But it's just because I've seen something like this before. In previous rallies, it just feels like exactly what we've seen. And it feels like that little fake up where you keep thinking, no, I shouldn't touch ETH, no, I shouldn't touch, I should stay away. And it slowly but surely just climbs to the top again. And it shows you why it's almost always been in the number 2 position. So again, longer term gains, ETH, screw that, right? No, definitely not. I think many coins like XRP, many of them actually will outperform significantly. Even Hyperliquid, I think, will outperform, right? But on the short term, I think since it's going to be one of the easiest gainers after Bitcoin runs, which again we've seen right now, Bitcoin in a crazy rally, then all of a sudden ETH starting the locomotive up. Still relatively undervalued though, that's why I'm anyway, you guys get the story. That's about it for my little thesis for today. Let me know how you guys are doing, because it's been some turbulence. And I might be tripping out a little bit in talk right now, but guys, you have to understand these are the craziest times, and I've been telling y'all for a little while, soon enough you can't sleep no more, but I'll make another video about that very, very soon here.